Welcome to Punk Rock Dads TV. I'm Richard. We got Matthew up here in Canada. And today our guest is singer, guitarist from the band 10 Foot Pole. We've got Dennis Jagard with us. Welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me.
No problem. How are you today? Where do we find you?
Oh, I'm great. We just released the first single from our acoustic record. It's called Sarcasm Decoder. And I'm excited because so far I've had a lot of nice reviews, which is, I mean, it's kind of normal that people aren't going to tell me the bad reviews, but usually I manage to find them anyway, and it kind of can wreck my whole day. So I'm especially excited about this one because I produced it myself and mixed it myself. And so it's like, I have so much invested in, like, if it sucks, it's my fault. So
no risk, no reward, I guess, though, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So at the moment I'm feeling like very happy because everyone's just been, I think it's rocking harder than most people expected because there's kind of a, there's an acoustic guitar cover, and when I sing and play by myself, it's just a vocal and an acoustic, but in the recording put in some bass and drums. And so it's kind of got a good thump to it. And so I'm excited about it. I didn't, no one's pretty much heard it. I tried to keep it a secret till now to play the music selling game. And so, one day finally a bunch of people get to hear it and comment. And so far it's been great. So I'm stoked.
Yeah, great. Good work. Good work.
It is great. Right. I played it this morning, and you got a new fan for sure.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it's and
he would have told me if he didn't like it, and he was pretty pumped.
Nice. Well, I hopefully they'll like the whole record as well. I just but that song at least gives an idea of what it sounds like. So people who are kind of like, what do we expect? Is it just going to be me crying with an acoustic guitar, and it's not like that at all. It's like full voice singing and kind of a little rocking. There are soft and poignant songs in there for sure. There's quite a variety of styles, but at least you get an idea of like, this is how it feels like, could go up and down with the mood, but that's how it sounds. And I'm excited about it to have people actually hearing it now finally.
Yeah, it's great. So Dennis, you're a part of the Punk Rock Dads group on Facebook.
Yeah.
And had a couple of guys on now for interviews, and we start off with the same question. So I'll hit you with it. How many kids do you have, and how old are they, and what do they make of your profession?
I have two boys. One is 13 and a half, and one is just turned 17. I'm in the 13-year-old's workspace right now. That's why I tried to avoid the art on the walls and stuff. But I came in today for a hard line, and so I'm not in my usual studio because I wanted to make sure we had a solid internet connection. And we're just trying to get the boys up and running with learning at a distance kind of school. And so it's interesting to see, like, we're trying to make them their own little office here and like make it seem professional so that they take it seriously and affect their study habits that way. But what do they make of my life? It's hard to say because I did it so far before they were around that they've just kind of grown into it. And so for them, it's kind of normal for me to leave on the road for a while, or to sing in the middle of the night, and to be like sometimes just kind of writing songs and like kind of get away from the family and stuff. But every once in a while I'll get a little feedback from them that's encouraging. Like last night I made a comment to my wife about a song, and she didn't understand what the song was about because she said something that totally showed she misunderstood the song. And then my 13-year-old explained it to her. He's like, well, the lyric says this and da-da-da-da. So really what he's saying is, and which I would expect since I'm punishing him by singing in the house every day. But it was cute to hear my child's interpretation of my lyrics.
That's really nice.
You touched on it a bit there, Dennis, but how long have you been playing with 10 Foot Pole before you had your kids?
Well, before it was called 10 Foot Pole, it was the same band, but with a different name, Scared Straight. And that started in about 1982 when I was, I guess, 13, 14 years old in junior high school. We just started playing music, and it kind of evolved. It's interesting because a lot of people I know have changed bands over the years and been in, one band for a year and one band for 6 months and one band for a few years. But literally this is the main band, not totally the only band, but pretty much the main focus of band that I just stayed in the same thing and kept going. And, other people kind of came and went over the years, and we even changed our name, but essentially it was like since 1982. So my first boy, the 17-year-old, was born in 2003. So whatever that math is, 20. So I'd already been in the band for 21 years. And in fact, I met my wife in Boise at a punk show. We were on tour with Guttermouth, and her and her friends showed up to the show. And that's the first time I ever met her. So, so it's all kind of like, so she can't really say, you shouldn't live a lifestyle of going on tour, because it's kind of like, she kind of signed up for it, and the kids were kind of born into it. And in fact, I think when she was pregnant with our first boy, I remember her being very pregnant. We were on a little tour with Millencolin, and I just remember, like her being like fully like ready to go, and thinking, I wonder what this loud Millencolin music, what kind of impression it might be making on the baby right now. Just
So
he probably was used to it.
She was on the road with you, pregnant?
Well, it wasn't on tour. It was more like that one was in San Diego. So I think we had a tour with them, but she just came to a couple of shows, like the LA show and the San Diego show or something. I don't remember the exact conditions. I just remember it was definitely at the new Soma in San Diego, and it was definitely Millencolin playing, and she was big. Yeah. Good times.
Good times for sure.
Yeah. And he turned out pretty good. So, in case you're worried about will punk rock hurt them in the womb? I don't think so. I think both my kids are pretty articulate, and hearing fast lyrics, trying to decipher fast punk rock lyrics probably, tease their brain a little bit. Like, I've got to pay attention, and I don't know. It may be genetic, but could be the nurture of being fed punk music in the womb.
So kind of piggybacking on that, who would you say was your first big musical interest, or your earliest biggest musical interest?
In punk, or just in life? Like what?
Sure. Both.
Yeah. I guess my first memories about music are being really little, and just, hearing music when my dad was working, and, I remember a variety of songs. I remember the Rolling Stones' "Miss You" being on the radio. Do, 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 do. Some songs just kind of stood out, and I always listened to the lyrics. I always wondered what songs were about, and was pretty interested in music and lyrics and things. I just was drawn to them. And over the years, different styles of music and different things affected me differently. And I always liked loud too. I was just thinking the other day of one, there was something about neighbors, and I had a neighbor who was a police officer, and he worked nights. And in 1977, when Star Wars came out, my dad had these giant speakers in the living room. And I remember playing Star Wars so loud that, my neighbor's wife talked to my mom, and he had gone storming around the block because he thought it was the neighbor behind us, but it was just so loud that it was bouncing off their house. So from his position, he thought like he was triangular. So he was about to go I don't know what they, back in those days, they didn't shoot people just for that, but they, he might kick in the door or something. He was pissed, I'm like 1977, I would have been 8 years old. So I was like a little kid with a giant stereo going, dun, 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 whatever, however Star Wars starts, the drill. Yeah. Anyway, I don't know, maybe it was 1978, but it was definitely when Star Wars was pretty new. So maybe I was 9.
Yeah. Cool.
And then my dad had a sound company. So my dad made, my dad was a defense contractor. He made inertial navigation systems and stuff for defense contracting, for missile guidance systems and things like that when I was a kid. But on the side, he had a business that he mostly was into filming, but he also had sound equipment and audio, and we had stages. And so as a kid, I remember at that time it was in my garage. So when I was 11 years old, I remember playing Journey, which I thought was the coolest thing at the time, so loud that people at the bus stop could hear it, because that's where the junior high kids were. And then they would know I was cool because I was playing, What was it? Loving, touching, squeezing. You know, the one that ends with na 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 na, like the most juvenile of songs, like neener neener neener. You know,
Yeah.
he's loving, touching, and squeezing someone else. And I was just cranking that at like 7 a.m. so the junior high kids at the bus stop would know how cool I was. But
Yeah.
So we're talking about through like massive PA speakers, because in the old days the PAs were bigger. It wasn't as loud necessarily as modern ones, but like we're talking like 7-foot high speakers.
Moving a lot of air.
Yeah. So good times. I guess so as far as music that I was interested in, I just always kind of paid attention and liked music in general. And then as a early teens, I was into kind of rock, which now would be called classic rock, but like Black Sabbath and Iron Maiden. And then my friends at the time, I met new people like on the wrestling team and stuff, and hung out with these guys that liked Minor Threat and Fear and 7 Seconds. And that kind of opened the door. The gateway drugs, if you will, would be like Social Distortion and Youth Brigade. And then being in Southern California, you know, we started the band and we played at parties. Like before we could hardly play, we were playing at punk rock parties in backyards, and just we kind of had a reputation for being like the little kids who could kind of play their instruments. Like, we played at the Cathay de Grand in Hollywood, and you know, we were like 15, 14, like we couldn't even drive. And I didn't know that at the time, but I heard from older people. And in fact, I went to college and one was like, yeah, I remember seeing you guys in Hollywood. You were like the little kids and it was so cute. You had your guitars and stuff, you know, but I thought like, yeah, we're tough guys. We're in a punk band, you know, we're in Hollywood staying out till 5 a.m. And, but I guess we were just like kind of considered the babies. Yeah.
Yeah.
But good times. That would have been, we were still called Scared Straight then. So that would have been in the 80s. And then we changed the name in 93. And, you know, we just went right into being 10-foot pole. I mean, we had different people, different members kind of came and went over the years as conditions changed. And, as you know, our drummer, Scott Rudinsky, started out as our drummer, and then he ended up being the singer when he kicked out the singer, I guess, because the singer didn't show up at the studio one day to record a song. At least that's what Scott said. And then so Scott ended up being the singer for a while. And then eventually we wanted to move on without him because he was playing baseball all the time and we just wanted to play music. So over the years, there's been a lot of different people in it and different stuff. But for whatever reason, I just kept writing songs and kept trying to get better. Maybe one of these days I'll write a good one.
Oh, I think you've done plenty.
Yeah. So you were obviously very committed to music before fatherhood. Has being a dad changed that? And how do you balance home life and studio time and touring?
I think to be a good dad, you need to be kind of happy, and you need to be kind of a whole person on your own. To be really a good dad, you have to be okay enough with yourself to pay attention to your kids and to be able to empathize with what's going on with them. And you know, if you're not happy, if you're not getting enough sleep, if you're like stressed over money all the time, it's hard to be a good dad. And so it can be tricky because the balance of doing music is financially risky. So I would say that the hardest part about it has been the poverty. So I'm also a sound engineer and have been very successful at times working for Prince or Weird Al Yankovic. I've done 500 Jimmy World shows. So in the sound world, that's very successful. But even so, I'm not constantly employed. There's been times when I was unemployed for months at a time. So it's kind of like a roller coaster of like 1 minute you're like, you know, I'm Prince's sound man. And then the next minute it's like, you know, the band's not touring because they're working on their next record or whatever. And, you know, people who are really successful have a great network and they go right to another job. But the reality is that most people have time in between jobs. And unless you decide that you're going to take a more secure path, which usually means less fun. Like at some point, if you want to do something really fun, like be in a band that plays all the time or be a sound engineer for rock stars, there's a whole lot of other people who want to do it too. And So
Yeah.
that competition makes it less financially viable for most people, you know, unless you get really lucky and just kind of like win the lottery. But for the most part, if you decide, hey, I'm willing to work with poop, whether that means being a nurse or being a plumber, there's not a whole lot of other people who are excited about working with poop. And so you can say, I'm going to charge you $100 an hour. And people are going to say, well, I want my toilet fixed. You know, they might call around and try to get a better deal, but at the end of the day, there's not that many people in your neighborhood. But if you say, I want to play songs for a living, there's a million other people right on your own block. Like, they're like, I'll do it for free. So that's a long way of saying that's what I felt has been the hardest part about being a dad, has been the extra financial responsibility of trying to take care of kids and also keep money flowing in so that we're not in extreme poverty. And I can't say that I've been successful yet. I've gotten this far, and we've been able to keep the kids with shelter and transportation and everything, but we're at kind of a tough point. Like, my oldest kid's a senior in high school, and I don't have a nest egg ready for him to go to college. And I don't have assets to sell. If anything, it's been a real struggle, especially with the pandemic. But even before that, I had some jobs kind of come and go. And in fact, I was doing really well a couple of years back, really well with the audio. And I even had jobs lined up way in the future. And I even was doing so well that I bought a Sprinter. I was like, man, everything's going great. I need a tax write-off because I'm making so much money. I need a write-off. And plus I want to tour the band. And kind of my retirement dream when I retire from supposed real jobs is to cruise around on tour, like to play music. And so I thought, well, I'll buy this van, and 30% of that money would have gone toward taxes anyway. So it's kind of like anything you buy for your business is at a discount if you're making money. If you're making money, then that would have been taxes. And so right after I bought the van, I lost 2 giant jobs, like 2 major jobs, like more than a year worth of income just gone. And so I'm sitting there with this like huge van payment and still have it, and just going like, what have I done? Like, what, you know? But that's the life. Like, there's not a you know, there's not a net underneath for when you fall. It's just, especially in the US for you guys, like there's no health insurance. When you have kids, you have a family, like, you know, what's going to happen next? And so I've always been, you know, kind of up and down with like, well, this is a good year. We'll try to save up a few bucks, but then there's this really cool guitar and there's this tour van. And, you know, if I do this stuff, maybe it'll pay off. And, it's a struggle.
Yeah.
But
sure.
yeah, I love being a dad, and I often worry about failing at different aspects of it. But the aspect that I've personally had to struggle with most is financial.
Yeah,
for sure.
You mentioned that there about, you know, doing something for yourself to make you feel whole. I mean, I know in my family, we talk about our love tanks. And if your love tank is empty because you haven't, you know, loved yourself, you can't give it to anyone else. So are
you getting into rated X material? I'm not sure what age group we're broadcasting to when you talk about your love tank here.
Yeah, just about fulfilling yourself.
Sorry, I had to take it there.
Yeah, fulfilling yourself with your own passion. So you've got something to give to the family. That's, I think, yeah, you were touching on that before.
Yeah, I think I think you have to try to figure out, well, you don't have to, but the way I've tried to go through life is to figure out what can keep me happy, and then to try to do enough of that I'm okay. Because you know, you're not going to be successful at what you want to do if you're bored, sad, sleep deprived, like those kind of things. So even within the band, for example, I just made an acoustic record, and part of the reason that I started even doing acoustic was because I was out on tour with other bands doing their sound. And then the part of me that wanted to be a musician and wanted to express myself and wanted to be creative and wanted to use my voice just to sing was feeling really stifled. And I tried to take electric guitars on the road, but it never really was that fun to play by yourself with an electric guitar for whatever reason. And when I kind of discovered the acoustic, it was it was fun. Like I enjoyed just sitting there playing my songs and working on acoustic versions of them.
Yeah.
So that was a way to keep my sanity while being in these high stress audio gigs, where when you're on tour with an artist, a lot of times it might be like a 15-hour day every single day. And after that day, you end up in a bus where you're sleeping with with your customers all around you and your coworkers. It feels like you never get off work. And so, so that one like hour or half hour, even 20 minutes of grabbing a guitar and doing something for myself, like that was like my break. It was kind of like exercise, or it would wake me up. Like a lot of times I'd be really groggy at 5 PM and just want to take a nap. And after singing and playing guitar, I'd be like alert and ready to go. Especially with some of my artists, it's okay if I go out on the street, like I'll go out on the sidewalk and punish their fans that are just waiting by the door for hours. And that's exciting, and it gets me kind of going. And then, so not only was the acoustic a nice break from my audio career, but the acoustic was a nice break from, if I tour a lot with 10-foot pole, the full band, eventually that the noise of distorted guitars and bashing cymbals gets irritating. And the acoustic was a nice break from that too. And I think, I mean, it's kind of funny because I don't totally think about this and plan it out all the time, but since you asked it that way, I guess really I was lining it up. My plan in the future is to make an acoustic record. And then when I get bored with hearing acoustic guitar, which happened after I just spent the last year making the acoustic record, now I'm just jazzed on distortion. And so like the last few weeks since Simmer Down's been done, I've been writing songs like aggressively and just really just shredding the guitar, like trying to learn how to be a good guitar player. But I'm excited about it. It's like, yeah, cool. And I can't wait to get the drummer and just let him cut loose. And the bass player that I was constantly on the acoustic record, I was constantly saying, hey, Richie, can you be a little more smooth, a little more legato, a little more like, hear how I'm playing these arpeggios. And he's like punk rock. He wants to be like, you know, hard, go, go, go. And I'm excited about writing songs where it's just like, okay, what's the gnarliest thing you can play on this? Like what would you do? What's the most bombastic drum fill? And I think that like kind of yin yang, whatever it is, like soft, loud combination, I hope will allow it to be sustainable, where, and for the audience too. So like if we tour with the rock band, I can't go through 6 months later and tour again. Like people don't want to see the same thing. But what if I go 6 months later as the acoustic act, you know? And I think by switching it back and forth, I hope it can make it sustainable where I can do both writing, playing, recording, and so that's kind of a self-help thing of like, you know, I'm going to get bored, so I need to change things. I used to do a lot of motorcycle stuff too. It would be like, if I get bored with work and go to the motorcycle and like, you know, like balance that, like I definitely need some like adrenaline and excitement. And lately I've been getting it more from playing than from motorcycle riding, which is probably safer as a dad too, that the motorcycle stuff was a bit risky, you know, especially I lived in Los Angeles. And so a lot of times the best part of my day was like that, like zigzagging through crazy traffic to get to work on time and going off little jumps, like get really aggro. Like sometimes people are like really aggressive and like go on the sidewalk or whatever it takes. And, you know, I could have, as a dad, maybe I shouldn't place myself in situations where taking the sidewalk and going off the curb like a jump is even an option. You know, because you got to do like, you know. Oh,
sorry, sorry, Danny. Go ahead.
No worries.
I was going to say, or ask, pardon me. When you guys originally formed, you'd entered a battle of bands. Did you guys win?
Yeah, that was Simi Valley, California, the Holiday Roller Rink. We were, I guess, 14 probably. It was within 6 months of starting the band, and we all could kind of barely play the instruments, but enough to where you could recognize the songs. And we couldn't drive yet. And like I mentioned, my dad had a sound company and he had little stages and stuff. And so we had pretty nice production. We had these 2-foot risers and, full speakers. And I had a guy mixing that was, a musician and knew how to make it sound good. And, so the first week, what it was there was multiple weeks, and the first week was like the first round, and then there was going to be the finals, and we won the first round. So it was really exciting. In our town, there was rivalries between East and West, the Simi High School side of Simi and the Royal High School side, and there was all kinds of silly nationalistic kind of localism vibes there. But in the punk rock scene, it was actually pretty unified. And that was one cool thing, was that kids who were friends of our band ended up being like kind of from all over and supported us. And so it was great. That first week we played, and there was another band. I can't remember how old the guys were. I want to say maybe 25, but to us, they look like super old and super professional. And we beat them, which probably wasn't fair, because probably the judges were like, "Oh, look at those kids. They're so cute. They're trying so hard. We should encourage them." But I heard that the other band was really mad. Like, "Oh, how could those guys win? They can't even play a Dorian lead in them." Like, who knows what musical terms they might use. But that's how I imagined it, was these guys are like, going to Music Institute or something. Like, how could those kids win? They don't even know what key this song's in. And then when we went to the finals, our bass player's brother, I guess, beat him up in the parking lot, and he got super drunk. And so he came in and just started playing everything in the wrong key. And it was just a total train wreck.
Yeah.
And that, I don't remember if I don't think he was our first bass player, but that was definitely his last night on that job. So people say, do you guys have all original members? You're like, well, no, because Gary Gillane, his brother, in 1983. We could have been original, but his brother beat him up, and he had to drink a bunch of Jack Daniels. And
Well, sort of piggybacking on the back of that, a lot of bands have members come and go, but few of them have members that actually leave or part ways to pursue a professional career as an athlete. When Scott left, did that affect your guys' friendship?
Yeah, for sure, because my whole relationship with Scott was being in his band. Like, I didn't know Scott until I showed up in his garage and he was the drummer. Like, I knew some of the other guys that had introduced me and said, "Hey, we're trying to get a band together. Do you want to bring your new guitar and see if you can play?" And I was like, "Well, I'll try. I don't know how to play it yet, but we'll give it a shot." And so I basically met him as, here, I got a guitar, want to try to play music. And over the years, I hung out with him and played shows. And so it was always, the band was our real affinity. Our connection was hanging out. We hung out and did some other things. One time he worked on a sound job with me. And I remember it was in Hollywood, and we took our skateboard decks and took way too long of a break, because we skated all the way down to Melrose and went to like Poser and bought like a bunch of punk albums. And the guy that hired us was like, "What the hell are you guys doing?" It was a great show too. It was Aggression and Dr. No and Ill Repute and Stalag 13 and Big Boys. It was at Hollywood at a venue that doesn't even exist anymore, but it was a big punk show, and we were like the little kids who were helping a guy that was a local sound guy who knew that my dad had a sound company, so hired me to help with things. And but anyway, I guess so. Yeah. So getting back to Scott, like I always had a lot of respect for Scott and really appreciated everything he did to help the band go. And there definitely wasn't any animosity. It just came down to, like, he was stoked and had a Major League Baseball career, and we were stoked that the band was doing really well and getting lots of opportunities. And we just I didn't think I could keep a band together for 10 or 11 months a year without kind of knowing that we had something to look forward to. And over the years, he's done great with Pulley. So if I would have known that he was as busy as he was, probably I could have kept the thing together, but we just didn't know at the time. And at the time we were, Rev was doing great, and we were getting offers to open for the Offspring, and there had been different times over the years where I had considered, trying to do something different just to keep it going. And at that time we just decided it's time to look for a different singer. I mean, that's a whole other story, but basically that was it. I tried to make a bridge with Scott before we made the call to him. We met with Brett at Epitaph and tried to sell him on the idea of, if we got a new singer, could he put out a record with Scott as a singer and just call it a different band name? And so we would, it's kind of like giving Scott like a golden parachute retirement thing, of saying, hey, we want to move on without you because you're gone all the time. But we arrange this cool deal where you could have this project and it'll be signed to Epitaph Records. We'll be your backup band. Like essentially we were offering for him to have 10 Foot Pole, but with a different band name.
Right.
And that's how Pulley was born, basically. Was so, he didn't take me up on the offer of being the backup band because he was a bit bitter about it, which I didn't blame him. He had a lot invested in 10 Foot Pole. And so he didn't, it was painful for him to even be around us or talk to us at that point. And as much as I tried to make it easy on him, it still was like we were moving on and doing something that he loved to do. And he just couldn't do it because he had something even better to do, which is like getting paid millions of dollars to throw a baseball. So
it sounds like,
and then plus now I'm 1,000 miles away.
Sounds like it wasn't really an option to, wrap 10 Foot Pole up and just start a new band. You were always going to continue with it.
Well, I mean, certainly we could have tried that, but at the time I was also the principal songwriter. And the whole band of 10 Foot Pole was ready to go. And we were getting calls to tour with other bands. So it was kind of like, well, yeah, we could start with a new band name. But we didn't even sell that to Brett. We didn't say, hey, if we start a new band, a side project, would you sign us? We were more like, we're here and we want to be 10 Foot Pole and, and let's push forward. And that was before I decided to try to be the singer. Even that was just like, we need a new singer because there's no way I could keep these guys rehearsing all year without, at one point before we pulled the trigger on it, I had offered, I basically had given Scott an ultimatum saying, hey, like for us to do this, we need at least, I can't remember how many it was. I think it was 3 weeks. I basically said, like, we need a commitment that you'll tour 3 weeks a year. Like for me to keep guys for 11 months rehearsing and ready to go, there has to be like this little payoff. It's kind of like sex and marriage or something. It's like there has to be something to look forward to, some light at the end of the tunnel. Because 11 months of being in a band that doesn't do anything is a long time to just sit around. And then if you think that nothing's going to happen, there's going to be another 11 months and maybe you'll do something. There's no way I could keep talented people around. And even as it was hard to keep talented people, even with real tours and stuff. Like, for example, Tony, our drummer at the time, ended up being in Papa Roach for many years. Like he had the skills to be in a real band and really succeed as a musician. So at the time, that's kind of what I was thinking was like, well, I've got these guys who just want to go out and tour. And if I don't do something right now, the band's kind of over. Like we're going to be maybe a 3 week a year band, maybe. Yeah. And, so that's how we were looking at it. And then once we started looking for a singer, I started thinking, wow, what if this person's not reliable? Like what, and then it was like, well, I wrote these songs. Maybe I should just like learn how to sing them. And so, even though at the end of the day, some people don't like my voice or don't like, the direction it went or whatever. But at the end of the day, that was the thing that felt the most right, the most natural. Because I had written songs like Old Man and like most of the songs on Rev, I wrote the lyrics for, and at least half of them the music for. So it was kind of silly for me to invite another singer in, and who knows if he'll become like a pro hockey player or get some other career move, or just decide not to do it anymore. Yeah. And whereas me, as you can tell, I'm still here, for better or for worse.
Yeah.
So switching gears a little bit, 10 Foot Pole has some incredibly entertaining music videos. What were some of the things you liked, or what did you like the most about making a music video? And maybe what did you like the least about them?
Oh, I'd say the most fun was riding go-karts. So that was neat to have a label like Epitaph that at the time had like a budget. They had sold something like 7 million Offspring records, and you know, when a label like that back in the day, when a label like that sells that much, like a few dollars from every record is going right to the label. So it's pretty lucrative.
That's awesome.
And so at the time, Brett was like, yeah, like let's have fun, let's do cool stuff, and we were riding around in go-karts. So that's the video for Broken Bubble. And then another great one that I'm really proud of was The Getaway, and it's basically a music video that's a spoof of a movie trailer. And the exciting thing about it was I wanted it to look like a real movie trailer, and the way we did it, which I thought was great at the time, was just having all kinds of silly location shots that made it look kind of, wow, they're at the beach now, they're in a jacuzzi, they're playing, they're running down the street, they're on a building. There was, I don't even know how many, but at least 40 different locations. And at the time, even the biggest bands, I think like the Offspring and Rancid, had videos that was just like them in a room and like weird effects would change, but it was just a band in a room singing a song. And so I was like, ours is like a mini film, and it had Brian Posen in it, who was a friend who we had met through the show, Mr. Show, Bob Cross and David Odenkirk. And like he's like a real comedy guy. He ended up being huge in Just Shoot Me. He ended up being like a real TV star, and he was a great writer. He wrote a lot of Mr. Show, and he's playing with like a little race car at the beginning. Oh yeah, and we had muscle cars in it. We had the director had a Camaro, and our guitarist had this sport satellite, and they're out like really like driving around being silly. And yeah, it was it was just a good time. My least favorite of making videos was just worrying about if they're good enough. We're worried about like, is this going to be good or cheesy or, yeah, I mean, that's the pressure, and that's kind of the pressure of anything with music, I think, is like, you don't want to do something mediocre. And so there's always kind of that like,
well, in that regard, The Getaways actually aged really well. I was just watching that today.
I agree.
Getting fired up here, and I when you brought up Brian Posen, that he was really good in that too.
Yeah, my favorite part was the hero shot at the end where I go when the wave crashes over me, and I'm like, I can't remember, like I had a suit on, but I'm like pulling my suit off, and the wave's crashing over me, and I'm screaming, and that was to me, it was like close to like kind of being a movie star for a minute, and growing up near Hollywood, it was always kind of like fun, like the idea of being in the films and stuff. And so for a moment, we got to be our own movie stars, and in an action movie, no less. Of course, I'd rather be a villain than the hero. That would have been really preferred, but it's kind of hard to get like Darth Vader masks and stuff on a low budget music video. But maybe next time.
Yeah. When did you make the decision to switch it up from the band format to the acoustic thing, or the rock band format?
Well, there was kind of me just doing acoustic, as I mentioned, was born out of the necessity of being alone on tours as a sound engineer with other artists, and wanting to be able to play songs and rehearse a little bit. And I didn't think at first, I didn't assume that anyone would want to watch that. Even 10-Foot Pole fans, I didn't know, like, would these songs be interesting enough acoustically to keep people interested? And so I just kind of did it for myself at first. And gradually, also out of necessity, I went away from my coworkers and artists, because I didn't want people who were paying me to watch me sing badly. And so I often went to places like a little bit away from the venues, like on sidewalks or something. And most of the time I tried to find a quiet place where I wouldn't be bothering anyone. And but I found that as I did it over time, even times that I was kind of a little discouraged about it, I started getting little positive rewards, like little reinforcement and little, someone would drop money and say, "Oh, that's great. Like I really enjoy your songs." Or I was watching you from across the street and really enjoyed that. Like, what's the name of, like, do you have a band or what is it? And so over time it kind of developed into something where I realized that some people might enjoy it. And then I started kind of changing the 10-foot pole songs. So I wasn't just like strumming them the same way I would at the same speed and the same everything. And I really enjoyed the freedom, and I started doing shows. So it basically grew to doing more and more in front of people. And I think the first shows I did were in South America. And like one night the audience was stuck outside and they were just sitting there for hours. I can't remember why, but they were just sitting there for a long time outside. And I was singing in the stairs, and this guy who was at the show was, it was a Jimmy Eat World show in Buenos Aires, I think. And there was a guy, and he was watching me sing. He was like, this is really good. You should just go sing to those people. And there were like a few hundred people outside. And I was like, well, I'm too embarrassed to do that. And he goes, why? They've been sitting there for hours. They're bored. They'll love it. And I go, well, if you think so, I'll try. And, so I went outside and I said, is it okay if I play a song or two? And people were like, oh, okay. Yeah, sure. And I started singing, and I can't remember if it was songs like Don't Be a Dick, but it was songs that had the like answers, like, I don't want to go. That was probably one of them. And it was a song that had audience participation. And like within minutes, there were like more than 100 people going, I don't want to go. And they had no idea who I was or who my band was, but they were just having a great time. And that kind of like a light bulb went off in my head. Like, well, maybe this is worth doing. Maybe people will give a shit. Maybe it's, and so then even just on that tour, I arranged a couple of other shows, and one of them ended up being just great in Santiago, I think, in Chile. And it was like a little club, and maybe there was 50 people there, 40 people there, but they just had such a good time. And like they were real 10-foot pole fans. So they were singing along with every song. Yeah. And so from there it grew, and it just kind of turned into this thing where at an acoustic show, I can tell stories. I can talk, as you know, I love to talk, as you can tell. Yeah. I like telling stories, and having been a sound engineer for Prince and kind of people like that, like I can try to mix up the stories a little bit. Like, I played baseball as a kid, or I was a wrestler for a while. And so I could tell stories from all these different aspects of my life that people who are fans of the band sometimes give a shit about. And so it's fun. Like I liked going to see Henry Rollins tell stories. So like, I didn't expect that I could be as dramatic as him and have a big point at the end of it, but maybe it doesn't matter. Like maybe people just kind of want to connect for a while and enjoy hearing that. So basically I started mixing up like kind of telling stories and playing the songs and it turned into doing like a whole tour of acoustic in Quebec. There were a couple of shows while I was on tour with other artists on my days off. And then it turned into an actual, like a whole tour in Quebec of doing just acoustic shows. And once we kind of proved it was possible, then the idea to do an album and to kind of keep pursuing it started emerging. And that was kind of the idea behind getting a tour van. Coming back to like the financial aspect, 10-foot pole isn't big enough to justify having a tour van. But if I go play acoustic shows in people's backyards and make a few bucks and just drive for a few hours and like do that day after day after day, like maybe I could make the same amount of money that I would make if I was here working in a warehouse or something. I don't know, but that was kind of like the light bulb in my head was like, what if? Wouldn't that be awesome to just go play? And because that's what I did in Quebec. Like some of them were real shows in real venues, but some of them were in people's houses. Like just they had a party and we played for the party and or in the backyard. So that's kind of where I'm at right now, is thinking like in the spring I might try to do like a full cross Canada tour, or maybe even in US cities too, depending if people like the new record. But like I think I only need like 20 or 30 people to show up, or really only need a host who's willing to kind of pay a big enough guarantee that it kind of like secures the that day's expenses, and then let them decide if they want to charge their friends for tickets or not.
Yeah.
But, you know, but even if it's only 25 people and they're all chipping in, and if I bring merch and they buy some t-shirts and stuff, like, I think that might be a sustainable retirement plan.
I think so that's too.
Well, if your tour sees you in St. Albert, Alberta, I think you could shoehorn 30 people into my backyard.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what I'm talking about, is like, you know, because on a lot of the big punk tours, because I have the whole band and we all have to eat and we all have to have a place to stay, and I pay the guys. That's another thing about being in the band is that I tried to make it professional and be like, I'm not just begging or demanding or asking for guys to show up on tour. It's like, there's a little minimum, and it's not a lot there. I'm very grateful that they would do it, but it is something where when they're all together, it adds up. And so for us to play as a band, it needs to be a show with like probably at least 100 people or 200 people to make it pay all that.
Right.
Yeah.
But me by myself in a van that has a bed where I can go take a break, like if I only drive for 3 or 4 hours a day and then get to play a show, that's awesome. Like anywhere, I don't care where it is. If there's 20 people watching, it's going to be fun as long as it's not too noisy. The one thing I hate is like playing in a bar or something where it's just like, because acoustic guitars, you know, for it to really work and for you to really enjoy the show, it's got to be quiet enough to where you hear a vocal and the guitar.
Yeah.
So that's my main thing, is just enough people to make it fun, which maybe is only 5, you know, like when I'm on tour with other bands, like I've had guys just come out, like just a couple of people sometimes show up and I'll play a show for them, because I'm going to play whether they're there or not. And then, you know, if we can make a tour and I have 15 to 30 people every day, you know, and just not drive too far, like not be a 12-hour drive for that. But anyway, so that's my dream. That's my goal of retirement, is like, I don't want to just like kind of sit at home and be on the dole or go have to work at McDonald's or something and just really do something that's not enjoyable. I love the idea of playing the songs. And if I can write good enough songs that people would enjoy it and be able to play well enough and sing well enough that people like it, then I just have to find like one house every 200 miles.
I love the storytelling aspect of it as well. I think that's a great combination of just telling a story about the years of music and how these songs came about. It's cool. It's a long trip to Australia, but if you're ever in Queensland, Australia, I will host the show.
Yeah, Australia is a special case because it's so expensive, not only to get there, but when you're there, the travel between shows is pretty brutal. On tours with artists, like I haven't been on tours like that. Like when we're in Australia, it's often like play a show, fly, and play another show the next day, and that's so risky. Like, what if your flight's late? But that's how they do it there, because it's just too far to drive. At least with being with, you know, like bands like Jimmy Eat World on tours where it's like going from festival to festival. But I don't know, you know, if we were big enough in Australia to where we could drive, like, I don't even know if there's like townships or something, like little towns and hamlets to where you can drive for 4 hours and there's something. I mean, obviously driving across the desert to Perth, I know there's nothing, but
there's not much that way, but yeah, you could definitely get up the East Coast and make 3-hour stops in places. I think it could work.
Yeah, or 1 hour stops. I mean, at the end of the day, like if I'm playing in someone's backyard, it doesn't matter if my next show is only 20 minutes away if they have a whole different group of friends.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So I'm open to the ideas. It's just the cost of getting there is pretty rough. So the record is supposed to come out, is being distributed in Japan. And I also know people in Japan. Like I just did sound for a band called Man with a Mission. That's an amazing band. And one of those guys owns a venue. So who knows what other opportunities. And we've never played in Hawaii. So I was hoping to go to Hawaii. There's a band that has been inviting us to Hawaii. That's great that we played with at Las Vegas Punk Rock Bowling. Oh, I just forgot the band's name. I was going to throw them a nice plug and my old man brain just blocked me.
I was at that show.
Yeah, it could happen. The punk rock.
At the country club.
Punk. It was Punk Rock Karaoke was after us,
Yeah.
but what was the band
Yeah.
before us? They
I
were
can't
from
remember
Hawaii.
the first. No, I can't remember the first band.
They keep in touch really well. Like they're like masters at.
So
The minute I get
record,
off this, I'm going to look it up, and it's going to be like, oh.
All right. We'll drop it in the comments below. That's what they say.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
So Simmer Down's about to be released. How does the anticipation of that feel for you this time around compared to something like Insider coming out all those years ago?
Well, things are different. In some ways, I'm more relaxed about things. Like I don't have high expectations. Back in 1999, when Insider came out, it was like, we quit our jobs to be in the band, and I had, I want to say we played 150 shows. I basically drove the band too hard, honestly, in 1999, and that's when Tony and Pete quit. Or no, that wasn't when Pete quit. That was, or was it? I don't remember. Yeah, maybe it was. Anyhow, no, because Glenn was on that one. Anyway, I drove the band really hard. And like just for example, we toured in Europe, we toured in Canada, and then we had like this 1 week off in LA. And instead of taking the week off, I accepted this tour in Mexico, and it was pretty rough. And so the guys were just kind of hammered. And I can't remember, it was Tony and Glenn after that quit, I guess. Just couldn't keep up with that level of touring. But back then I was trying to make a living at it. Whereas now, I mean, I would love to make a living at it, but I don't have that expectation right now. For me, it's more personal in a way because I produced and mixed Simmer Down, and because it's acoustic instead of with Insider. I knew like people expect a punk record. This is like Insider is going to be, if they like 10 Foot Pole, they're going to like Insider. Like if they liked Unleashed, Insider was as good or better than Unleashed, in my opinion. And so I was very confident with it. But Simmer Down is such a different thing. Like, I don't know, I think that a lot of older punk parents and stuff, and even younger people might love the melody of it and the kind of the intimate guitar in your face thing, but it's a whole different thing than like skate punk, fast drums and fast guitar. So I don't really know what to expect in terms of, I think that some people will love it and some people will hate it. The people who hate it probably just hate the idea of an acoustic record in the first place, I'm guessing. But it is more personal because as the producer on this record, I just like took control. And on a lot of other records, I delegated control. Like the last record, Escalating Quickly, I delegated a lot of stuff to Ryan Green, and he did amazing stuff and got amazing like guitar parts out of. We had guest guitarists, but even like Ryan was playing keyboard parts and all kinds of crazy stuff that really was like him saying, I think the song needs this, and then me listening to it and going, yeah, that's cool, but like really giving him a lot of free reign. Whereas Simmer Down is like, I listened to every part. Like if I didn't like the bass part, I called up Richie, or I even have another friend, Aaron, who used to be in the Mr. T Experience, and he played some of the mellow parts. Like Richie was just too punk to play some of the soft parts. And like in that situation, like it's my decision. So if somebody hates it, it really, they're hating my vision. Yeah. So in that way, it's kind of personal, but yeah. That's the excitement of being an artist,
Yeah. How's the response been so far? I know you've got the pre-sales up with all the different formats, vinyls and the different colors and the cassette tape. Is that going well for you?
Well, yeah, I mean, that whole thing is kind of like, that's what the music industry kind of demands these days, is like people can just hear the music anywhere, but what they really want is some kind of physical memorabilia to take away from it. And so, really it's just something for collectors, more or less. Like people want to have something cool on the wall. It's like a vinyl thing. And so the albums are certainly part of that, like having different types of vinyl. And it's not a lot, I think, Rev and Insider, those albums all sold like nearly 100,000 records. The numbers of the vinyl we're selling is, 1% of that or something. So, So it's really a much different thing. Like that physical media is just kind of like something cool that people want as a takeaway, but it's not the main thrust of what the music's about. So I would say that's going well because people like the packaging and that sort of stuff. To me, what's more important is, do they like the songs? And only today is the first time that people really are hearing stuff and coming back. Like, people are buying the record because they thought it looked cool and we had a good reputation. But if they like Sarcasm Decoder, then that's a whole different thing. That's saying they like the sound of the guitar, they like the story, they like the overall. And to me, that's like really gratifying that we're getting great feedback on that. So hopefully it'll result in more sales and more people at shows and all the other things that happen when somebody likes music. But ultimately, at the core of it is if they like the music. And so far, so good. So I'm feeling good about that today.
The first thing that struck me when listening to Sarcasm Decoder was the harmonies in there. Really, really great.
Yeah. Our drummer, Guillaume 14 from Quebec City area. Well, he's actually from a town even like kind of north and like kind of on the edge of the river or the lake there. But he's a tattoo artist too, if you needed a tattoo. He is a really good singer. And I went on the whole last tour with him, and he sang a little bit at an acoustic show, but I couldn't really tell. And you know, like at the rock shows, honestly, I don't even put the other singers in my ear because I'm just trying to sing the right parts myself. And if I hear them singing, a lot of times I can't tell whether I'm on the right note. So I kind of lay down the law and be like, okay, here's my voice, here's my guitar. If I'm in tune with myself, you guys try to sing along and try to make it sound good, you know? And that's kind of our strategy for the live shows, because it's hard to play guitar in time and in tune and to sing with it. And so it was really an eye opener for me when he sent me his first couple of tracks of backup vocals. Like, his voice is really just a great sounding voice. He could have been in a boy band. Like, not only is he pretty, like he's a very handsome guy, but he has just this beautiful voice that sounded like the Eagles or something, like just right off of, like, you know, just that kind of open sound, that the opposite of me. Like, I'm kind of like, hey guys, you know, how does a cow get, you know, and whereas his voice is just really smooth. So don't let him hear this. If you're watching, don't get too big of a head here. But I really like, he didn't even sing that much on that song compared to a lot of the other songs. Like, I really utilized him. Like, his voice just sounds so good. I couldn't help but put him all over the place. So that's definitely one of the exciting parts of the record, and also a very surprise for me. Like, wow, our drummer is just like a great vocalist. Like, he's really good. So I can't wait till you hear the rest of the record. I hope you agree to it. Yeah, especially as a sound engineer, it's real neat to have something like that. Like, whether it's guitar solos or backing vocals, it's always neat to have like some ear candy and stuff to to just kind of play with. Like, Guillaume's vocals, I kind of played with them a lot, like the effects and everything on them. Like, I usually kept mine pretty well. In Sarcasm Decoder, I guess I put the distortion thing on the one part, but for the most part, my vocal was just kind of like, here's me, and, you know, like a little effects here and there. But with Guillaume's vocals, it was a lot of fun stuff. So I wish you could hear it also, but I can't release it yet because that music industry thing of, like, you have to just be real careful about things to try to get Spotify to play it and other, you know, because otherwise, like, the record comes out and then it's over, and then you just spent a year working on something that's just like
take all the steam out of it. So it's been a strange year. How's the COVID situation affected the release of this record? Did you have other plans that have been shelved?
Sure. Well, for me, my assumption was that I was going to be on tour all summer as a sound engineer. So when the COVID started happening around March, April, or February, March, kind of instantly changed that. When things were first starting to shut down, one of the first decisions I made was that I would try to mix Simmer Down myself, and not only mix it, but also the editing. Like usually on a record, hire a producer and have somebody who knows what they're doing, like really get in and do the nuts and bolts. So I'm a sound engineer. I'm a really good sound engineer, or I wouldn't be able to work for Prince. I would have got fired on day one instead of working for him for a year and a half. But live sound is different than trying to make a record. And live sound is kind of like taking all these things that are just thrown at you in real time in a blender and trying to just make it sound as good as you can given those conditions. When you're making an album, you're the one making the conditions. So you have no excuses. Like, you can make just the vocal in a quiet room, and if it sucks, it's your fault. Whereas, you know, in a big show with a loud stage, there's only so much I can do to get rid of like the drum noise in the vocal mic, for example. So there's always a certain amount of smearing and smudge stuff that happens. But anyway, so once the pandemic started, I thought, well, maybe this is. One time Prince told me, he's like, "Do you make records?" And I said, "No, I just focus on live sound." He goes, "Well, you should make records." And I kind of was like, and he was always hitting me with kind of these crazy ideas. He also said, "You should start a sound company." I'm like, I already had a sound company and my dad's sound company, and it sucked to have to worry about what gear to buy and whether your customers were going to hire you that year. And you know, he was like, "No, we need to start, what did he call it? New NPG, like sound or something, new power generation sound." And you know, I was kind of like trying to keep him happy, but also not go down that path of like, I'm going to have a warehouse full of gear and a whole bunch of people I have to take care of on the payroll and worry about. It's like, I want to fly the plane. Like, I like mixing. It's kind of like, I want to be in the band. I don't want to be the person who has to arrange all the gigs, but sometimes that's just what the job requires. So on this record, usually I would delegate all this editing and production work to somebody who knew what they were doing and could do it fast. But because I was going to be home for months at a time, I decided to try to do it myself, with the knowledge that at any time I could just send it to a different mixer and have them make it sound good. And so basically Simmer Down took a lot longer than it would have if I had a pro do it, but I had the satisfaction of getting to make a lot of choices myself. And also I learned a lot and did trial and error, and I had time for trial and error. If something sucked, I could just come back the next day and just delete that and start over again. And I'm really proud of the result. Like, I'm happy with how it turned out, and hope that other people like it. And you know, so in hindsight, it was kind of cool because I also got ear training. Like, I was actually doing sound, even though it was for a record. I was actually doing it for those months rather than just being at home worried about whether my job as a sound engineer will ever come back. So, and it was kind of cool because like I said, like Prince had said, you know, you should make records because I think that his idea was basically like that making a record trains your ear in a different way than just being at a show doing your best. It's like, like you're kind of guiding it more and have more, you're more intentional about the whole process. And so anyway, I finally found a band that was willing to let me mix a record.
That's a pretty good endorsement from Prince.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, he didn't say the record would be any good, but he said I should do it. Probably you just meant for my own training. But I'm proud of how it turned out, and I hope other people are. And that's kind of a cool thing about acoustic is that it's pretty sparse. So it's not as dense as a rock record. So I think that kind of plays to some of my strengths as a sound engineer, like being able to make things sound pretty good and in a sparse way. So I don't know if I'm going to try to attempt it on the rock record. I've already asked Kyle, the guy who made Setlist, if he might be willing to help with the next rock record. We'll see. Because I've almost got enough songs for a new record, for a rock record.
Oh, nice.
Cool.
Yeah. I mean, I think I've got 9 new ones right now, and the guys are all just starting to get writing. So the goal is to write like 50 songs, and just like the 12 of best ones end up on the record. But I don't know, some of these ones that I've already been writing, I'm starting to get attached to. So
right on.
Double record.
When talking about both the 10-foot pole and your sound engineering, you're a man of many talents. And you've worked with artists like Jimmy Eat World, AFI. You were the personal sound engineer for Prince, and you mentioned Weird Al Yankovic. What were some of the takeaways from those experiences for you? Tell us a little bit about that.
No, that's a tough one because it's so broad. I would say, having worked with all those different artists, like one thing that's tricky as a musician is you see other people be successful and you see their level of skill or whatever they're doing, and you might, and it might hurt kind of your confidence in what you're doing, which, like, just for example, I saw a guy that I'm friends with, is a sound engineer for artist, Jessie J. And I didn't really, like, I knew that she was a name, like, act or whatever, but I didn't really, and then I just happened to go to her Facebook page and there's like, I can't even remember what it is, like 80 million likes or something, like not like 1 million or 10 million, but like so many. And it's just like astounding. And like, you know, so there's part of me that as a musician is kind of thinks like, who am I to think that I can even survive in this world when I'm, you know, like an ant in a world full of these, like, you know, mega stars. But also having toured with the people that I've toured with and seen what's going on, at the end of the day, as long as you're entertaining some people, it's really just a numbers game of what you need. Like, I don't need what she needs to survive, like the level of millions of dollars that have to come in. I'm happy to play for 20 people. If 20 people are loving my show and I didn't lose money on the show, if I make a few bucks, to me, I call that a good day. So I think as long as your expectations are in line with what you're doing, like, I don't have this sudden idea that I need to have millions of fans. I mean, it'd be great. I won't be mad if it happens, but it's not like, it's not essential. It's kind of like you can be a little fish in a big pond and still find little algae. You know, I'm just going to look under the rocks. Oh, here's a little algae here. You know, and I don't have to be like the great white shark that's got to like have 10,000 calories a day to survive or whatever it takes. Yeah. It's been a long time since I read Jaws, but I think that was basically the idea, is like Jaws is a mama shark and she's got a baby and she's got to feed that baby, you know? So she runs out of food and all that's left is humans. So it's not that she's being mean. She's just being a nice mommy.
Misunderstood.
Yeah. Without getting too technical, how does running sound for a band like AFI differ from an artist like Prince? Do you have to get yourself in a different headspace before you start that?
Well, without getting too technical, my role with AFI was the monitor engineer, which, like, for most artists, there's at least two different engineers, one who mixes for the band to hear what they need to hear to play, and then one that mixes for the audience to hear, like, kind of the beautiful full mix of everything. Mm-hmm. And so for AFI, I was the band's monitor engineer. So all I had to do was keep those four guys happy. And it may be another mix for like the tour manager or the technicians and stuff. But really, like, if the band was happy, they were going to have a great show. They could hear what they needed to hear. I did my job and they loved me. That's it. Done. So a lot of my job there was, you know, paying attention to what they were doing and watching and having like spare parts, like, because they have wireless systems. And if Davey jumped in the audience and it ripped his pack apart, I had another pack and another ears, and just like get him going as soon as possible, as safe, and get him happy again as soon as I could. So that's that kind of a job. It's like I'm servicing these four guys. Then the person in the audience who's mixing for the audience is providing service for the whole crowd, which anyone could write a bad review. So you really want everyone to be happy. And that might also include like someone who's romantically involved with someone in the band. So, you know, there's all those kind of factors, like, you know, why isn't the guitar player loud enough? You know, and of any band, that's kind of the case. So you always want to make sure that your critics and your people, like, just for example, at Weird Al Yankovic show, almost every show I walk right up to the people in the front row who are sitting with the speakers right in front of them, because almost invariably there's some like front fill speakers right there. And I literally hand them earplugs and I say, if these ever get too loud, like don't hesitate to come back and talk to me, because I'm in a different venue every day with different equipment every day. And if you're not happy with something, I'd rather hear about it before you write an angry review that gets back to the artist. I want the artist management, and the audience, everybody to be happy. So working for Prince, to give you an idea, I was doing both sound guys' jobs. There was only me, and I was out in the audience like 100, sometimes more than 100 feet away from the stage, mixing like what the drummer would hear, mixing what the guitar player would hear. And in Prince's case, he didn't use ears. We had wedges, and he wanted to get the same mix that the audience gets. So it was a delicate balance of trying to make the stage sound exactly like what the audience hears and not get feedback and keep him happy. And it got to be too much. So that's actually like with Prince, I basically quit because I was doing too many people's jobs in a way that I was pretty sure the train was going to crash. And so I basically told him, I literally told him, I'd rather have you be mad at me for leaving than mad at me for wrecking a show. And basically every time you did a good job, you'd get more jobs with him. So it kind of became like, if things were good one day, then the next day he might throw you a curve, and all of a sudden I'd be doing some other job that makes the whole rest of my job precarious. And it just got to be too much, where there was too much pressure, and I didn't want to wreck. I didn't want to have, it could be a show where, millions of dollars are involved. Like if I do something wrong that makes him unhappy and he walks off the stage, then I've got a whole bunch of people asking for their money back. Be like, Denny Jagard, it's his fault, and the promoter's like, we have to pay back $1.5 million. You're like,
no, you don't need that.
So anyway, and it was a bummer. And I thought I was going to get the job back, because at first he did hire monitor guys. Like as soon as I left, he got a monitor guy. So anyway, but that's a whole other story. But that's basically kind of how it went, was like, I kind of had to put my foot down and protect myself from hurting my reputation. But I always thought I would get the job back. Like I carried around for years, the gear and the notes, so that, because I might get a call at any minute. And I did actually, but that's a long story too. But I did get a call and go work for him for another week or so, and had some great shows. And, so I always carried around like notes and stuff, because at any minute you could get the call and be like, Prince wants you back. Is there any way you could be in New York in 3 hours?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and then to circle back a little bit, how awesome is Weird Al to work with? I'm an enormous fan of Weird Al.
Yeah, I really respect him a lot. He's got to be like one of the hardest working guys in showbiz, and really like ultimately kind of genius level, like how he's built his career and been able to stay relevant all these years. And he's involved in so many things that I had no idea. And until I worked with him, like I had no idea how big of a star he was, really. Like, honestly, when they first called me, I was like, Weird Al. Yeah. I used to listen to KMET when I was a kid, Dr. Demento show. And like, I knew the silly songs, but I just assumed that they were kind of like shows at a club and maybe 500 people showed up. And like, I didn't know that I'd be mixing for 15,000 people at the Hollywood Bowl for Weird Al Yankovic. Like, what? But yeah, like he's huge. Like in New York, the show, so on the first tour I did with him in New York, the show sold out and it was like, 8,000 people or whatever. And and I was like, wow, like that, he's built a whole career based on these silly parodies, and he's really funny. But as a human being, he's really quiet, but when he does talk with you, he's really respectful and polite, and he seems to really care about things. And so it's been it's been a privilege to work for him, and I look forward to seeing him again soon, I hope.
That's great. Is there an artist, a newer artist that you've gravitated to lately? If someone you'd like to share with everyone?
Let's see. What's something that's just really been slow songs, they skinny hoes. I've been there's a lot of stuff I enjoy, but the most funny one and the one that I really have enjoyed the most lately is Lizzo. And in Boise, I was working at a local club where my friend now, Rocky Johnson, sings covers for all these different different types of music, and it's basically like a college party more or less. She sings covers and she throws out like vibrators and things to the audience, and so like all the girls really love her because she's very kind of, you know, women friendly, and bring, like, if it's somebody's birthday, she brings them up on stage and like gives them a lot of attention. But anyway, just from being in that club environment, which I hadn't been in for many years, and seeing the music videos and stuff, the one that really struck me and I had to like kind of look up later was Lizzo has a song called Tempo, and she basically is just rocking and kind of proud of her large body and like just loving herself, and it's really cool. And so I've, you know, listened to all her songs and just really appreciate like the imagery and the honesty of, or at least what I perceive as honesty in the lyrics, and just being like, you know, this is who I am and this is what I'm thinking right now, and I'm going to tell you. Yeah. So I love that. Lizzo.
Right. A lot of
I listen to all kinds of music. Yeah.
So
cool.
How do you think the do-it-yourself ethos from the early days has evolved to where it is today? And sort of jump on the back of that, do you think bands have it a little bit easier today in that it's quite a bit easier to gain exposure, where when maybe Scared Straight started, it was quite a bit harder?
That's a tough question, because I think in some ways it's easier to gain exposure, but in some ways you're just like one of millions and millions of bands out there. I would say I maybe just Scared Straight got lucky, so I have like a skewed vision of it. But Scared Straight, we were basically kids who were playing at punk parties, and then we met Ill Repute, and we loved like Stalag 13 and Aggression, and we ended up on a record called Nardcore, which was Oxnard Hardcore on Mystic Records. And we kind of instantly bonded with these guys, and suddenly we ended up planning a tour across the country with Ill Repute. And we were like, I guess it was 85. So it's kind of just like barely driving and planning a whole national US tour. And I don't know, it could have been because our singer Scott was covering for Ill Repute on drums. And also my mom had a van, and I think Ill Repute thought that they'd get a van tour out of, like, we'd all travel together. And anyway, and so for me, I can't say, because maybe Scott did a bunch of legwork and networking and stuff that built to that. But from my perspective, it's like, we're in a band, we're playing at parties, we're going on tour across the country. And all of a sudden we're playing in front of a lot of people at in Kansas and Denver and Lincoln, Nebraska. And just, so even though that tour was put, the way that people knew about shows, as far as I knew, was like ads in Maximum Rock and Roll, which meant that you had to get your show list in. And if a venue changed or something, it wasn't like today where with the internet and cell phones, where you could instantly change something and then call your friends and put up new information. But even in those days, for whatever reason, we had great shows. Like, we played at Detroit and Pittsburgh, and like, it was going really well until our car got stolen with all our equipment in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And then we played one more show in Baltimore on borrowed equipment, and it was pretty sweet. I was playing on a little PV amp that didn't have any distortion. So like Scared Straight, even, you know, before 10 Foot Pole was even kind of more distorted, more hardcore than 10 Foot Pole. And so I remember playing like solos in Scared Straight, and it was totally like jazz guitar. It was like, but there was something about the chords that were very like minor threat, which was cool, because we were in Baltimore, like we were in the East Coast, and we were charging hard and playing, and me and Scott wanted to keep going on tour, and Tony of Ill Repute wanted to, but some of the other guys didn't. so we ended up calling it quits. But I was like, I had my dad's credit card out. I'm like, I'm going to get a new guitar. I'm going to get an amp, and it's an emergency. And he gave me this credit card in case of emergency. This is an emergency. I need a guitar. But anyway, so then the tour was over and we drove home. But that was 1985, and without the internet, we played in front of hundreds of people, and I mean, maybe we just got lucky. I don't know, but I think it's really hard for bands to get big enough to be able to tour the country and have hundreds of people show up to their shows, even with the modern technology. I mean, I understand that artists like Billie Eilish have been able to build like crazy huge careers, but the numbers, that's like playing the lottery, and like a few people win, and I'm not saying that she just made it through luck. Like, obviously there was a lot of, there's a lot of factors that could go into it, not the least of which is talent and good songwriting. But even for people who have talent and good songwriting and basic smarts, like just being one of millions and millions of bands out there trying to do stuff is daunting. And honestly, that's one reason I tried. One reason I got the tour van is to separate myself from bands who are just on the internet. Like, if I play in your family room and sing to you the song you want to hear, that's going to make an impression. Like, even if I suck a little bit, like, people don't sing as well live as they do on records, and for people who haven't noticed yet, but, we do a little fixing in the records and try to make the best presentation possible through doing multiple takes and picking the best parts. But when we're live, like, every once in a while, the pitch is rough and it's brutal, but it's also like honest and open, and
it's part of
that connection is, and to me, I think that's what music ultimately, like, why I still do the band, is trying to feel connected to people and feel like that there's some kind of social service of trying to unite people, especially in the modern day, like, where everything is so divisive, whether it's political opinions or religion or what kind of styles they are. Is this guy old school punk? And like, what kind of gatekeeping is happening in every part of life? And there's so much divisiveness that the idea of you go to a show and your friends go to a show and you all enjoy this silly little song that might touch you in some way, like feel like an emotional connection, is kind of a magical thing. And I think there's a lot of things I could have done with my life, but that one, at least currently, gives me kind of the best feeling, like that I'm actually making people's lives better, which sounds totally silly. Like, if someone doesn't like the band, they would like hear that and just go like, wow, this guy is just so full of shit. But if you love the band and you grew up on the band, and I play in your living room and sing those songs for you and talk about why I wrote it, that's kind of a cool way of bringing connection among humans.
Another question we've asked everyone so far is, who is your Mount Rushmore of punk, the 4 pillars of punk that you hold strong?
I think I want to answer that in terms of like the people I respect the most, like, because there's a lot of bands that are bigger, but I'll try to think of people who have influenced me in a who have influenced me in a positive way. I would say Ian from Minor Threat. I've never met him, but just the lyrics and like Minor Threat kind of got me started. Kevin Seconds from 7 Seconds, like, someone who writes a song like Trust is like, that's why I'm in punk rock. And that was 40 years ago. Like, just the thought that they could do that. You could write a song about, friendship. Like, it's about trust. It's about, and at the time I was listening to music about whatever rock music and pop music is about. It's always about love, whatever kind of stuff. But punk could be about anything. And that really opened the door for me to be like, well, I could write a song about anything. And what am I going to do with that? That's kind of exciting. So who'd I say? Kevin Seconds, Ian, who else? Greg Graffin, of course. Like, the idea that somebody could be as articulate and literate and also on point. Like, like, I don't know if he's ever said something I disagree with, and I don't listen to him all the time, but
Yeah.
like, it's kind of cool to have someone who's dependably level-headed, smart, and kind of, it's nice to see people like that in the world, because we're constantly faced with these other people who are just raging about things, or have really like bizarre experiences about religion or politics, or things that have just seem so wrong. And it's kind of cool to have someone like that as like an anchor. So let's see. So that's 3 people. Who's in Mount Rushmore? Does there need to be a 4th? Who comes to mind? The Mount Rushmore of punks. I'm trying to not put somebody who doesn't deserve it, but also I'm trying to not leave anybody out who's super important. You know what I'll say? The band Youth Brigade. Will sink with California when it falls into the sea. Like, I don't know if there really was a better youth organization that did stuff. I don't know. But as a kid, I saw that and I was like, that's really cool. Like, it sounds like this charitable, progressive, we're going to do something good for people. And I guess now it's turned into the punk rock bowling scene and other things. So at least in my mind, they were kind of like the cornerstones of what made me decide that punk wasn't just about getting drunk and smashing bottles and being aggressive. Cause I did have all those kind of drunk kid friends when you're 13 years old and people are just partying. So I did have the party friends, but to me, punk was more about the progressive side of things, of like, what can we do to make the world better and enjoy each other's company and still play like loud, crazy, aggressive music.
Yeah. Great answer. Thanks.
Huge. What would you say has been the biggest factor in 10-foot pole's longevity?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure what in me makes me want to keep doing it. I mean, definitely the reason that 10-foot pole has gone on as long as it has is because I just couldn't quit. Like, have you seen the movie The Wrestler, Mickey Rourke?
Yes.
Yeah.
I like to use that as an example because I think in punk rock, you get, when you play a show, and if there are people there and they sing along, it's an amazing feeling that's this positive reinforcement. And I think it's a lot like Mickey Rourke as a wrestler, his wrestler character was like, once you've had a whole stadium full of people cheering for you, your character or your songs, it's hard to let go of that. And so kind of no matter what else I've done in my life, the high of seeing an audience singing my songs, like nothing's beat that. And so I've always come back to it. And like, even when at times it was financially not the best move. And then for those who haven't seen The Wrestler, not to totally give it away, but the basic idea is that the wrestling character is in a lot of pain and even has like kind of medical conditions that could, he's basically risking his life to be a wrestler rather than living in a more productive, responsible, yet boring job. That, and that's kind of, that's why I've always come back to punk, is that I just love it. I love the feeling of being connected with people and singing and going. And then there have been times when I was like, this is really stupid. And I'm like leading myself into bankruptcy and I really should, focus more on a positive career. But even in the pandemic, like a lot of my peers as audio guys are audio people of any gender are really focusing on training. But it was hard for me to start this knowing like my next audio job, I can't even say who it's with, but theoretically I have something lined up. It's in 1 year. And I can't get motivated to sit there and take a class on some mixing board or something that, like, if I don't use it for a year, I'm not going to remember anything.
Yeah.
So to me, creating, like, I think of the music as art in a way, like it's like a portfolio. Like an artist might spend hours drawing a painting, then he puts that painting somewhere and it's a portfolio that he can go back to. And I look at songwriting that way. Like if I write a song, it's there. It, like, especially once I record it, it's it's like, it's solid. And if I write a bunch of songs, now I have 10 songs that I wrote. Whereas if I spend 3 months training to be a good audio person, and then don't do anything for 9 months. But anyway, I guess what I'm saying is, I think I'm a good audio person, but other people might be getting better than me while I'm messing around with my punk rock career. And that's because, like Mickey Rourke, like I love the applause. Or no, that's a Lady Gaga, I guess. I live for the applause. But it's true. Like that's the exciting, payoff of being in the band. And when the pandemic hit, like I couldn't get motivated to sit and study audio networking, or like the things that I need to study aren't even mixing sound. It's more like how to use some new mixing board that might be obsolete by the time the pandemic's over, or how to network your wireless microphones. And it's just so like incredibly boring stuff that I don't want to learn anyway, but I have to learn to be competitive. Yeah. And it's just hard to get the motivation to do that. But right after this, I'm going to go downstairs and I'm going to pick up a guitar and just start singing and working on songs. And I'm excited to play my new songs. I can't wait to get them recorded and put out the next 10-foot pole record, which is going to be, at least the songs so far are like really aggressive, like almost Scared Straight vibe, like kind of like so far, kind of like some have more of like a little metal thing going on, but some of them are more like 80s punk, where it's just like a simple idea and it's just hammering it. So I'm really excited to like, to do something different and to get out, especially after Escalating Quickly was so poppy with Ryan's keyboards and kind of more mellow. A lot of the songs were more mellow. And then now, of course, the acoustic record Simmer Down is super mellow. But I just want to like give people a kick in the nuts so that they don't think that 10-foot pole's gone completely soft.
Yeah.
So I think that'll be out like kind of in spring of next year if all goes well. So
cool.
Sweet.
Cool. All right, Dennis. Well, I think we've taken up enough of your time. The new record, Simmer Down, is out October 9th. New single, Sarcasm Decoder, out today.
Yeah. Can I can I mention 10footpole.com? TEN.
Absolutely.
So we tried to put everything there, like I'm on the Facebook and Instagram and those sort of things, but TENFOOTPOLE.com has links to everything that you'd want. Okay. Like I think in the news right now, in the main page you hit in the news is the Sarcasm Decoder links to whatever Spotify and 10 other places you can listen to it. And I think even within the discography, I think you can listen to the Sarcasm Decoder right there. But we have a lot of other neat things too. Like right now on the, we have a Patreon subscription based kind of fan club, if you will, of people who want to support the band. And there's some benefits that you get in that. And some of the benefits include a 30% off of the stuff in our web store. And at the web store, we have skate decks and vinyl and other stuff. So that's kind of with the music business, the way it is, like the way that we try to make a few bucks is to sell things like skate decks that are like really cool to have and just put on the wall. And I'm even going to open a new, I think I'm going to put a new thing on the web, which is memorabilia and fundraising by selling old gear, because I have a bunch of guitars and amplifiers and stuff that I'm trying to move. So if somebody's a really big fan and they want I think guitars make good art. Like even if you're not a guitar player, like having a guitar on the wall is kind of neat, and some people pay a lot of money for art. So, to have a functional guitar that looks cool on the wall and you could play if you wanted to. Anyway, I'm hoping to find people who are willing to support the band, and then hoping to turn that money into helping get the band on tour and pay for the kids' food with the money that I have been siphoning from the family budget into making music. So 10footpole.com has information about all that, Patreon and skate decks and future projects.
Great. Well, everyone check that out. And Dennis, thank you again for your time. It's been great.
Oh, thank you. I also want to say, I know I've been talking a lot, but I also want to say thank you for having Punk Rock Dads. I think it's probably like the coolest group that I've ever seen on, as far as the most supportive. Like I know that there's a different aspect of Punk Rock Dads that was meant to be kind of emotionally supportive. And even though it's grown and it's going to be hard to say like how well it survives the growing pains. So far, it still seems like there's a very supportive vibe, and you know, the trolls seem to get found and kicked out pretty quickly. And it's great to have people who are who at least who start off with that understanding and expectation of support. Like, we're here to support each other. At least I hope that's the way other people see it. And like, I signed up to be a mentor, but so far when I signed up to be a mentor, I was hoping that somebody who wanted to be a sound engineer or like a touring tech would want advice, and I'd be able to kind of help them with a career. But so far I haven't found, you know, like, there's a few people who signed up, but I don't think they read what I was offering. Like, basically what I'm offering, if anyone's watching this and you think you want to be a touring sound engineer or any kind of a sound engineer or anyone who tours or does production, like, I could offer reasonable advice to help you with a career path, and like, what should you study and who should you talk to and what's the best approach for things like that. That's kind of what I had to offer. I don't want to hear a whole bunch. What's that?
That's an amazing offer for people out there. That sounds really great. Thank you.
I think so. Like, for someone who wants to do that, I think I could be really helpful. What I don't want to do, I'll just admit it. Like, I don't want to hear a bunch of demos. I don't want to try to be a producer, and I don't want to. I love music, but it's one hard thing about being in a band is a lot of other bands give you their music and you want to be supportive and you want to try it out. But it can be overwhelming to get a lot of, you know, music in progress. And sometimes I need to just kind of focus on what I'm up to and not try to be like a producer for starting bands and stuff. So, like, I could give advice. I'd love to give advice about touring and that sort of thing, but I don't want to hear hours of demos. I'm trying to say that in a diplomatic way. You guys are like, Dennis, don't be a dick. I wrote a song called, for those who don't know, I wrote a song called Don't Be a Dick. And I wrote it for myself to remind myself to be nice. And that's, these are the kind of situations where that goes through my head. Thank you so much for doing Punk Rock Dads and for building the community and giving us this avenue to help each other.
Thank you. I created it just as a way for me to connect with a few like-minded people. My goal was to connect with 50 people around the world. And
well, you far exceeded that, mate.
Yeah. And I'm just taking it as it comes. And, you know, today I get to interview, you know, someone from a band that I've loved for a long time. So,
oh, you have another one after this?
Right. No, that was for you, Dennis. But just got to take things as they come and see what opportunities present themselves.
Thank you so much. I hope to see you guys both out on the road and the other people watching. Like, we'll keep trying and try to put that tour van to good use one of these days.
Right on.
Sure.
And wish the best for everybody for health and safety and security and for being good parents and all that.
All right. Okay. Thank you so much, Dennis.
Okay, guys. Thanks so much. Take care.
Your soothing voice can prop me back up, then knock me down.